Hi, welcome to a new episode in the Internet Surfer, hosting the most horror and creepiest stories from Reddit. Please don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy.
People of Reddit, what's the creepiest encounter you've had with a complete stranger that still gives you chills? Episode 2.
Years ago, 1998-ish, I was a 19 years old single struggling mother of a 3-month-old, and my car broke down in the middle of December on the interstate. The exit was not too far, just a mile or so, but I had a baby with me. The wind was atrocious, and it was starting to snow. Not only that, but this was after midnight, since I'd just picked up my daughter after working a late shift. A kind couple pulled over and gave us a ride, and I was so eternally grateful that I wanted to help others whenever I got the chance. And yes, I still realize it was stupid, but that was my naive mindset at the time. I still feel guilty to past hitchhikers, but this experience made me never offer again, no matter what. One day a few months later, I passed a broken-down semi on the interstate and assumed the man I saw walking toward the exit was the driver. I was a fuel desk supervisor at a local truck stop then, and cell phones were not yet in every pocket. Figuring that he was just on his way to call his company or whatever, I pulled over and offered the ride. The next exit was just a couple miles down the road. The guy gets in my car and asked me how far I could take him. Of course, I immediately understood there was potential danger. If he were the driver seeking help, he'd ask me to take him to the next exit. But I thought I would be rude and didn't want to insult him if he was just simply a struggling person. Again, stupid. So I just said I could take him to that exit anyway and decided to just get on with it. He was immediately setting off my alarm bells, which I kept ignoring. He was sort of leaning back and forth, keeping his eyes straight ahead and his hands on his legs. I made some small talk, asked where he was going. He said something about walking to Alabama. We were in central Kentucky to pick up his car from someone. Obviously, that's really weird. Got to the exit and was thankful it was about to be over. I could drop him off and hope I helped him at least a little. Back then, I was a smoker, and he'd taken one of my cigarettes when I offered him one. So after we get to the first gas station, I gave him all of my remaining cigarettes and all the spare cash I had on me. It was extremely pitiful, just a cup full of change. But it really was all I had, and I wanted to truly help him out. My relief and rebound desire to help him quickly died because he did not open the door. He just sat there, now completely still and stiff, gripping that cup of change and pack of cigarettes, staring straight ahead. I became terrified. Not sure how long this happened, but I was shaking when I was trying to reach for my door handle and praying I could unbuckle my seatbelt and leap out before he could grab me. Just as I touched the handle and reached for my belt buckle, he finally looked at me. He said I was too sweet for what he'd planned and told me never, ever pick up a stranger again. Then he simply opened the door and walked away. And I still look at caught killers to see if any of them match my memory of him. I also followed his advice. I feel like shit, but I've never picked up a stranger again.
Before I got my own laundry machines, I used the shared laundry room in my apartment complex. The building for the shared laundry is separate from the units and you have to go outside to get to it. Tenants all have our own keys to get into this room, which they keep locked at all other times to avoid vandalism, etc. One night I was coming back from the laundry room with my dry clothes and I heard someone say, "Excuse me," from behind me. I turn around and there's this guy standing there who I've never seen. He stared at me silently for a second with a stoic face and narrowed eyes. I don't know what it was, but the second I saw him every alarm bell started going off in my head. This was a regular-looking guy, there was nothing about his posture or anything else that would outwardly suggest danger. The conversation went like this: "Guy, I just moved in and don't have a key to the laundry room yet. Can you open the door for me?" Me, paused for a second as I was trying to remember if someone had moved in recently, and I did recall seeing a moving van a couple days before. "Oh okay, yes, I can open it for you." "Guy, can I just borrow your key?" Me, "Hush. Guy, it's cool, just tell me which unit you're in and I'll put it in your mailbox when I'm done." Me, "No. I will open the door and there's a wedge inside you can use to prop it open." Guy, "Okay. Thanks." I opened the door for him and started heading back towards my unit. Then I got the feeling I should look back, and I did, and saw him standing in the doorway watching me. I was pretty uncomfortable about that, so I turned and went the opposite way that I would go and went behind the building and through a different entrance that I didn't use since it took me the long way around. I just had a strong feeling that I shouldn't let this stranger know which unit I was in. Despite him saying he now lived in the complex, I never did see him again. I can't prove he was up to no good, but I've never had that kind of internal reaction to seeing a regular person before or since. When I was 13, I took the bus to the local Walmart, and as I was approaching the store, a woman stopped me and complimented the bag I was carrying. It was a hippie-looking bag I'd borrowed from my mom, and I thanked her and told her just that it was my mom's. She complimented me for being real about that and then offered for her and her husband to give me a ride home. I felt really uncomfortable, and said no. I'd also just arrived at the store and hadn't even had a chance to go in. She gave me a business card, for some kind of car-related business, like a mechanic, and told me to email her, and I went on my way. I never did email her. Whole thing made me uncomfortable as hell. Really felt like I almost got trafficked or something. The other one that sticks out in my mind, I'm not even sure if it was real or if I can describe it in a way that does any justice to how bizarre it felt. I was probably 8 or 9, and I lived in a small apartment complex. I strapped on my rollerblades and was going to head out to skate around the complex, as I often did. I rolled down the sidewalk away from our door, and looked down the long, straight pathway that was just on the other side of the wall our door was on. At the end of it, a good few 100 feet away, I saw what looked like an old person dressed in a white formless garment. They looked wrong somehow. They spotted me just as I spotted them. Then, with the most unnatural movements, they began very quickly moving towards me. Luckily, I was about 20 feet away from my front door. So I rolled back the way I came, and stepped back inside and locked the door. I remember so clearly standing there against the door with my heart pounding out of my chest. To this day I have no explanation for this memory, nothing like it ever happened again. I've been on vacation recently in Thailand, and I was walking with my 12-year-old cousin in the middle of the night to go buy some snacks from the grocery. I left the store for a couple of minutes to answer a phone call, and when I got back a white man was standing next to him asking him if he wanted to smoke weed, so I just walked in front of him and blocked his view from my cousin and told him to leave. While we were walking back to the hotel, I could feel someone behind us and kept looking back every now and then. When I entered the lobby of the hotel, I saw him walking away from us. That 10-minute walk back to the hotel, I was so scared and creeped out that he'd do something to us. So, I went to this music store to buy some strings for my violin. Because it was a 5-string, both an E, the highest on a violin, and C, the lowest on a viola, I had to buy a pack for a violin and the C string separately. I know this is boring, but it is all relevant, I promise. When I go to pay, the clerk helps put the C string into the other pack and hands it to me, without bringing it up, and I put it in my case and zip it up. The next day he shows up at my door, having looked up my address, saying he can get me arrested for theft, and it was on the cameras. Not sure how he thought he could turn that on me when it was clearly just neglect on his part, but the fact he actually went that far to cover his own ass was pretty damn disturbing. Not very eventful compared to a lot of other stuff on here, but I thought I'd share it anyway. I was walking my dog along the canal path on a chilly winter day when I noticed a man on a bike pedaling towards us. I moved over to let him pass and noticed he was a little odd-looking. Long straggly hair, mismatched clothing, sandals on his feet and pink ribbons were tied on his handlebars. As if that wasn't enough, he had a wicker basket on the front of his bike with a radio in it. The radio was playing that creepy Tiny Tim song, Tiptoe Through the Tulips. He half stopped, said hello and saluted me. I said hi and saluted him back. He grinned and said, "Don't go the way I've just come, I'm expecting trouble." I didn't really know what to say, so I said thanks and he cycled away. It was all a bit strange and off, so I did what he said and walked back the way we'd come. I've never seen him again. Pretty sure I was almost abducted as a 9 or 10-year-old. I showed up at a neighborhood playground, and it was empty except for a man standing there. He called out to me, and I came a bit closer. I don't remember having a real concept of stranger danger like they teach it, but I knew something was fishy. He said he just found these basketball cards, and wanted to give them to me. But the pack was clearly just freshly opened by him. And furthermore, I collected baseball cards, not basketball. If they'd been baseball cards, who knows what kind of danger I could have gotten in. I declined. He insisted. I declined again. I turned with my little bike and got out of there. As far as I know, he didn't chase after me or anything. I don't think I fully understood the danger I was in. I didn't even mention the encounter to my parents until years later. I filed away the memory, and then years later it popped up and a light bulb went off. I was taking the bus home with my dog one night. Noticed a man sitting a few rows further down staring at me, like, really staring, not just looking. It went on for some 10 minutes. The bus approached the last stop before mine, and for some reason I decided to slip out just as the doors closed. Even though he made me uncomfortable, it didn't really have anything to do with the guy. I think I decided to let my dog stretch her legs a little before bed. I'm a brisk walker, and was striding ahead. As I made it about 100 meters or so down the path towards the neighborhood I lived in, the man suddenly caught up, having gone out of his way to get off the bus, at what was obviously not his stop, after I slipped through the closing doors. He tried to make small talk, and complimented my smile. I never smiled at him or anyone else on the bus, but I tried to politely brush him off and be on my way. He then got in front of me and blocked my path, got in my face and very aggressively asked, "What? I'm giving you a compliment. You don't want to talk to me?" Out of the blue a young woman appeared, asking for the nearby university. It was literally a stone toss up the road, so she knew exactly what she was doing. As we walked towards the university, the man skulked back to the bus stop. I think about this girl every now and then, and have no doubt she saved me from what could have become a very scary encounter. Thing is, if I had decided to wait for my bus stop, would have exited almost right outside where I lived. In a dark and secluded one-way street. There would have been no one to save me from any kind of encounter there. At 16 I was admitted into adolescent psychiatry for a few days, due to my mom setting me up, even had a staff member tell me, "You don't belong here, why you are here?" Anyway, I was admitted at night and they gave me some drug to calm me down due to me being furious from it. There was no available dorms, so they trusted me enough to put me in a guest-type hospital-like room that actually I was able to wake up and walk to front desk. Immediately this Jamaican chick about my age walks up to me, says, "Give me your hand." I actually thought she was a staff member, and she says, "None of us belong here. Please understand God works in different ways, and your dad wants you to know he loves you and is watching you." My dad passed when I was 5. I asked how you knew. She just smiled and walked away. Found out she was a patient. I still think about it. I once almost hit a dog running across the street in the early evening on my way home. I got the dog in my car and drove to the house address listed on the tag and knocked on the door. No one answered. I called the hashtag on the tag and left a message saying I had their dog and that I would wait about 10 minutes. Almost at the 10-minute mark, a youngish guy in his 20s walks over to my car from the street. I asked him the dog's name, which was on the tag, but just wanted to make sure it was the owner. He was giving kind of off vibes, but nothing too creepy. I learned a couple years later, after his arrest and address were publicized, that he was the murderer of a woman in my town who was randomly stabbed one evening jogging along a popular trail. The case had been unsolved for many years, and it was during this period, before he eventually turned himself in, that I had this encounter. One time I was doing door-to-door sales and this guy just gave me a weird vibe, and so I played it off like I was sure he couldn't save any money if he signed up with what I was selling, so I was like, I'll just go, and then he got in his van and followed me around the neighborhood and kept trying to convince me to get in his van and come back to his house, and he said he thought that I was cold and I needed some tea or some soup. I literally called my coworkers and told them that if anything happened to me, this is the address of my murderer, because he was that creepy. I ended up hard selling the next customers, who were this really nice old couple, and I went into their house and I spent all day telling them all the different details of the plan so that I didn't have to be out on the street anymore. A bad one I had was as a kid growing up outside of Chicago and before having a cell phone. I just graduated 8th grade and summer break started. It got dark and my buddy and I were walking back to his house to play GTA San Andreas on his PS2. As we were about to cross the street, a car pulled up on us with around 4 guys in it and no other vehicles on the street. We couldn't see their faces clearly as the orange glow of the street light illuminated everything but the inside cab. Driver started off with, "Hey guys," and proceeded to ask us what we were up to. They knew we were terrified. He asked about the skateboard I had just gotten for graduation and the game in my friend's hand. I told him we were heading to my buddy's house to play the game. What was unsettling was no one in the back seat was conversing, it was dead quiet. The passenger in the front kept checking his mirror, as did the driver checking his rear view. The contents of the whole conversation were awkward, with frequent periods of silence like they were just trying to find shit to say. As a kid, I was always ignorant in thinking I could fight my way out of any situations if need be, but that fantasy was shattered as the reality set in that these 4 dudes in their 20s to 30s could do whatever they wanted if we were caught. My buddy's responses to these guys were very soft-spoken, almost to a whisper. He couldn't even think straight. My gut dropped as soon as they offered us a ride. Without looking at my friend, I said, "Run." I knew out of the 2 of us, my buddy was faster as he was a sprinter, and it would mostly likely be me getting taken. We both ran past the back of the vehicle, into an alley behind a supermarket, and then into random people's yards. I didn't even think to knock on any doors or scream. I heard tires peel off, and realized I got separated from my friend. We ultimately found each other by his house a few miles down the road. Never saw that car again. Still think of that to almost 2 decades later. So, about 15 years ago, I lived in Jerusalem. One night, I'm on my way home, and I see this guy, long hair and beard, just staring at me as I walk past. Never blinking. Now, when you live in Jerusalem and someone is being dodgy, your first thought is, terrorist. So I tense up, start to walk faster, getting ready to run if I need to, when suddenly he calls my name. I turn around, and I look at him better, and I have no idea who that is. This guy looks homeless. So I say, "Sorry," thinking I misheard, and he didn't say my name after all, and he goes, "Yeah, it's you." And he starts to laugh and walks away. To be honest, I never thought of it as creepy, just weird, but when other people hear the story, they seem to think it is creepy. I just always wondered if he was like a schoolmate of mine that I just don't remember, and that has fallen on some rough times.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.